Almost 25 years ago, I met our first guest tonight. Since that time, I've managed to get another job, but she is still an international star. Eartha Kitt tonight. Eartha, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You would not remember this, but many years ago I was executive producer of the Mike Douglas Show, and I was much younger, obviously, but I remember being so fascinated with you. You were on that show, and your daughter was there with you, and she was about this big, I think.
About 3 years old, I
Yes,
think
about 3 years old, yes, I remember that. And she's here today, and she's much taller.
Yes. But still is beautiful.
Oh, wow, is she beautiful.
If not more so.
Why is she not an actress? Did she not want to do that? Because she's so beautiful.
Well, I think she wanted to be a model at one time, but I have a tendency to think she didn't want to be rejected as often as it's possible for. And in this business, you know how you have to be strong.
Have you handled rejection well, or was it painful for you? Did you just let it roll off, or was it always painful?
I don't know what I did with it. I think I just let it go.
Yeah.
I don't really think that I really planned to say, oh, I'll forget about it. Because when you're rejected, no matter which span of your life you're in, you still feel it as you go along. The older you get, the more you're able to handle it, I think. But in the beginning of your time, I think I just felt, well, that's the way that is, and let me take another step out of the way.
Can you characterize the kind of people who have made decisions about your life? Are producers and casting people a certain type, or are they all different?
I think they're all different because, as the agents in America told me, you are a hard sell, and we don't want to deal with all of that work. But because you're so different and you don't belong to anything that they can identify you with, you are considered a hard sell, and therefore they don't know how to cast you, and therefore you're apt not to get cast at all. Unless something comes along that is so out of the ordinary, and they said only Eartha Kitt can do that because it's so out of the ordinary. So it can work against you as well as for you.
Well, go back to your earliest memory. When's the first thought you had about being in show business?
I never did.
Never did?
I'm here as an accident. As a matter of fact, didn't you know that, Roger?
No.
I'm an accident all my life. I think I started out as an accident.
Well, how did you get so different? Unique is something, everybody talks about being unique. That word, if you looked it up in the dictionary, you'd see Eartha Kitt. There's nobody like you, and you've never been like anybody else. You've never copied anybody else. Well, how did this happen?
I think it just happened. I don't think that I ever wanted to be like anybody else, because from the beginning of my memory, I remember being told that I was different, so why would I have a desire to be like anyone else?
Well, a lot of people copy, or they have idols, or they pick up traits of people they admired as a child. Who did you admire? Who were your favorite performers?
There were some people who I liked. I think it was, I liked Lena Horne. I liked Paul Robeson. But Paul was more of a theatrical personality, and I liked theater people. I think the movies, to me, have always been something that is untouchable. You cannot reach it. It's so imaginary, and therefore I never reached for that which was so imaginative that I could not reach it at all. So I think I aimed for the theater more, because that to me was more real. To me was more touchable. I could feel the people, I could see the people, and I could embrace myself in the people and have them embrace me. And I can feel immediately the results of my work in front of an audience.
You once said that if Lyndon Johnson had made love to you, or vice versa, he might have been a better president.
I think he would have been.
I think he would have been too. In fact, a few of those guys, if they made love a little more often, would have been a little less uptight as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But that time in the Lyndon Johnson era, when you made the statement about Vietnam, obviously changed your life and changed your career, because did they feel that you... Tell the incident first, so the viewers... I know this is a famous incident for some, but some may not remember. You stood up and spoke your mind. And
I was invited there to do that, Roger.
Right.
I was not invited to one of those dinners to sing one of my songs, I Want to Be Evil.
Right.
I was there specifically to answer the question of the day, which was, why is there so much juvenile delinquency in the streets of America?
And you said?
One of the biggest problems was our involvement in Vietnam. because our boys who were in a position to be sent to Vietnam felt that if you're a good guy, you're the one that gets sent to Vietnam. If you're a bad guy, you're considered not desirable enough to go, so why not have a little stigma against you? So cause a little problem. A lot of the boys felt like that.
And at that time, Johnson was escalating the war in Vietnam and needed as much national support as possible, and they felt you were, what, out of line?
I guess they did, because that's what it says on my dossier.
What's it say? Out of line, Eartha Kitt. Out of line. Eartha Kitt, don't talk to her. She's out of line.
Well, on the dossier that was given to me, the luncheon happened in 1968, and by 1974, I remember the day because I was going to take my daughter up to the mountains to see the snow in California, and they called me, Seymour Hersh, and asked me if he could print it for the New York Times. And he was reading this to me on the phone. And it was so hysterical to me, I didn't know if I should be laughing or crying, so I think I did both at the same time. But I did give permission for them to print it, and he said, there's only a little smidgen of what is there in the CIA dossier.
Now, CIA, do you think Johnson had the CIA investigate you or the FBI?
That's what it says on the bottom of the page of the dossier.
Because he thought you were subversive at that point.
He tried to get something subversive on me, but he found that I love this country, and that's what the CIA and the FBI told him. She happens to love her country, and she is perfectly willing to fight for it, but from the inside. I didn't go to one of those foreign countries and get up with the, like you know who. But at the same time, this country says you are entitled to freedom of speech, freedom from oppressions of all kinds, and then when you have the right, specifically you're asked to give your honest opinion about something, particularly to someone who's in a position to be responsible, quote unquote, for the happenings of the American citizens, you tell them the truth, and they don't want to hear it.
Would you have fought in Vietnam had you been eligible to go? I mean, if you were a man.
I don't think so, because I think that the political situation between the United States and Vietnam was very uncomfortable for America. France had already proved the position there. The other countries that were there had already proved that it was unwinnable war, it was unfightable war, and therefore why would we put our young boys in a position that they were in, that they would have no position probably of ever coming back home. Then not be able to come home with the feeling of we won.
Yeah. The impact on the American society for 10 or 20 years was very tough.
Yes, and that position at the time that I took, it split the country, United States, in half with the argument, with them saying, yes, she was right, but did she have to say it? Well, so many people want to say things, but they're so afraid of standing up for their rights and what our country says we are entitled to. They don't, because you find that what happens to me when the government comes after me, blackening my name and ostracizing me from my own country, putting me out of work, well, then that puts a fear in the rest of the citizens that say, well, this is what's going to happen to us if we do the same thing. So we all go with our heads in the sand and we say nothing, even though we are walking around so angrily, not saying anything. This country is at a stage of fury at the moment where any minute a fire is going to break out, and it's going to be taxation. It's going to be a war against taxes, because the American people are tired of being overly taxed and not getting properly benefited from these taxes. And they ask for more and more and more and more. And we are in the inside of this country are getting weaker and weaker and weaker, because we're putting our fingers out there and putting our fingers out there. All of our fingers are spread out to such an extent that we're not protecting our own country. And we don't know what to do about it, because nobody has a leader. You can go around any of these countries in the world.
Yeah, Japan's been in chaos.
Right.
Germany.
Right.
England, major is in trouble.
Right.
South American countries. Canada has had problems. Mexico, they shot the guy who was running. So what's going on?
You have a lot of weak minds talking to weak minds, and nothing happens. There's a negativism everywhere. What's going to happen? The people are going to have to take over, and they will.
Do you think there'll be riots in this country eventually?
You don't need riots. All you have to do is you just need enough people to stand up and say, in a very dignified way, which is what I did in the White House. It was not,
How much money did that cost you in your career?
Oh, well, how can you tell? How can
Millions?
I ever? Millions and millions and millions.
But you
and
were a
millions.
hit in Europe. You went to Europe, and you still are very big over there, right?
Yes.
So that you pulled yourself out of it.
Yes, but
Are you angry at the United States?
Yes.
At the government or
Yes.
the people or
Not
the
the
country?
people, not the American people. The people of this country didn't know what happened to me because of what Johnson did. He had given what happened at the White House to the press and the media according to the way he wanted it presented.
Back with a very fascinating woman, Eartha Kitt, right after these messages. Stay with us.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday.
I'm going to come back and ask you some more questions about issues in a few minutes, but I want to go back because, and this is relevant to what's going on today. Your childhood was not an easy one. You did not grow up with your parents, as I recall from your autobiography. An aunt raised you. She abused you, would you say?
Yes, so it was not that my aunt was raising me. She was doing her Christian duty because she was told that if I was not taken away from the family down south that my mother had given me to, that I would either be abused to death or starved to death or worked to death. So that's how she brought me to New York. Why?
Now, tell me about that abuse. Was it in fact abuse? And the reason I'm asking that is today, and it seems as if everybody was abused, and many people begin to use that as an excuse for their behavior. You've gone on to international stardom, raising a family, loving your country. Why did that abuse not turn you into some kind of a nutcase that that uses it as an excuse for crime or what have you? What's the difference between the people who use abuse as an excuse and the ones who don't, is what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, for myself, I felt I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. And therefore, I wanted to use whatever it was that I thought I was capable of. After all, I was told I was a rather pretty child. Even though down south they were telling me I was an ugly duckling and I'm a yellow gal and I don't belong to anybody and I don't
Because
belong
one of
to
your parents
anything.
was white?
Well, who knows
Is that why
what
they
were.
do that or what?
Well, because I'm not the right color. I don't know what. All I remember, I don't even know what my name is. Remember, they took the
Yes,
name away from me.
yes.
So where did Kit come from, for instance? I don't know whether it's from the plantation owners or whether it's from a real family. I never saw a man around that would be considered my father, or that was called my father. And therefore, I don't know what color my father was, even though I was told that my father is supposed to be one of the cotton plantation owners' sons who took advantage of my mother when she was about 13, 14 years old. And therefore, ta-da! But at any rate, who knows where we came from? I'm supposed to be part Cherokee, which was part my mother, and part black, and part white. So with this confusion and this mixture of bloods, you have a prejudice within prejudice. Because the black people don't want you because you don't look like them. The white people don't want you because you don't look like them. And there weren't any Indians left because they were sent off on the path of tears, given smallpox blankets and all that from the history of my ancestors in the Indian side.
What did that do to you inside, not belonging to any group?
It made me.
Made you who you are?
I had to become something positive.
Why not negative?
And not in order not to become not to be called negative anymore.
Where's that break point in people? How can we reach the kids who do have this kind of a background? But what is it in you what did you say to yourself that said, I can go either way here,
Yeah.
but I'm going to be positive? Do you
I
remember?
think it's just there. I don't remember thinking in terms of, I'm good. Oh, no, wait a minute. Now that I'm thinking about it, it might have been. I was put into Salem Methodist Church choir. And then the kids there too, the dark ones. In school, PS5, PS119, PS136 in Harlem. I was always abused. Not the right color. So you're automatically beaten up because you look different. I didn't talk. But I was put in a play in school in Salem Methodist Church. And it was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Snow White and the Seven. What part did you play?
Guess.
Snow White. You were Snow White.
And my aunt, after we had seen the movie, and my aunt did something very nice. She bought a pattern and she made me the dress. It was exactly like the Snow White's dress. And when I finished the play, a lady came and she put her hands on my shoulder. I was standing next to my aunt. And everybody thought that she was my mother. And she said, "Your child was born with the hand of God on her shoulder." I never forgot those words.
How old were you?
I have no idea. Well, I was old enough to, I don't know, 7, 8, 9,
Wow.
something like that. And I remember the strength that those words gave me. That might have been the
turning
beginning
point
of a
that-
time that I said, God has given me something. I think I'm going to use it. So when the opportunity came for me to join the ballet company on a dare, I had no intentions of getting into show business. I was definitely afraid of my aunt. She wanted me to be a concert pianist, da 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 da. But when she took me to see Earl Hines. But when I played, as long as I was playing like Earl Hines, I was fine.
Really?
I mean, as long as I was playing concert piano,
Right.
I was fine. But Earl Hines, no. So she was giving me a hard time because she didn't know what she wanted me to be either.
When she said the hand of God is on your child, are you a religious person today, or were you then, or when did that come into life?
When you think in terms of religion, I don't think in terms of this great big man sitting up there in heaven with a beard. I think nature, to me, is God.
So you had something inside of you that was a natural force, and you
Obviously.
decided to use it.
Yes.
Boy,
And I felt that because someone had suddenly said,
somebody had recognized you
Yes.
and given you hope.
yes, and give me hope. And so did my school teachers, as a matter of fact, Roger. Mrs. Beans in PS 119, the first PS 5, the first school I ever went to here, when the kids were beating me up and calling me all sorts of names, and you yellow gal, my school teacher,
Said you had it, or?
well, she never said anything, but she gave me that special attention.
Great. Special attention. We'll be back with Eartha Kitt in just a moment. We're back with Eartha Kitt. Eartha, you've traveled all over the world, partly because the United States wasn't hiring you at one time because were you blackballed? I mean, was the word out not to hire Eartha Kitt here, do you think?
Well, the saying is that Johnson sent a message across the United States through the media, behind the scenes. I don't want to see that woman's face anywhere. But also, when they're sending the CIA and the FBI to places that you have been working or that you might have a contract for the future, they don't want you because now you are a problem. They
Right.
don't want the CIA and
We're
on
afraid the
their doorstep.
IRS might be right behind you.
There
so
you are.
They don't
So-
want to do that. So how do people feel about America overseas?
They think Americans are still cowboys.
Do they really?
Chasing the Indians.
You're talking in Europe now, mostly.
Not only in Europe,
Really?
yes, South America. I think they don't, particularly at the moment, I think Americans are considered very confused. Our government has confused everyone around the world because every time he says he's going to do one thing, he turns around and does something else. So nobody can depend on us, and therefore the dollar is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and nobody's buying American bonds anymore, and therefore those who are sending things to our country for us to buy, our import, is going to be much more expensive for us to buy than our own produce because nobody's buying it.
You grew up poor. I read that you. Actually, I did too. I used to put gum on the end of a stick and try to get it out of the grates. That you could get the money, get the coins out of the thing. But people say that that's the cause of crime. That poverty is the cause of crime. Is that true?
Not necessarily so.
No?
I think being oppressed more than anything, rejection, feeling that you're not wanted, feeling that no one cares about you, feeling that there is nowhere to go, maybe then that will turn into crime more proficiently than otherwise. And I think there will always be somebody who's going to want life a bit easier, for instance, and take what you have rather than working for it. There's always going to be that kind of thing. But in the abundance under which it is today, it's because I think the main reason is we are becoming poorer and poorer. The poor people are becoming more and more poor. The middle class people are becoming poor. And the rich are going like this and saying, I'm taking all my money and going to another world. But if we have one tax on everybody, where we're all responsible for ourselves, be able to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, put one tax on everybody, the poor, the middle class, and the rich have to pay the same rate. And you're not punishing the rich for what they have. You're not making the middle class pay for both ends. And the poor people are also paying for their share. But I do not think that the politicians, no matter whom they are or where they are, and I'm talking about my country particularly because I love this country and she's been so screwed by you know who, but they are so busy buying blocks of votes. They give you this because if you give me that, then I'll have my
If you become dependent upon the government, then you have to do what they say,
right.
Isn't that?
And they're paying you to stay poor.
If you were president of the United States, and that's unlikely, I suppose, as unlikely as me becoming president of the United States, so we can fantasize about that, what would you do? What would be your message to the American people? What would you say? What would you want them to
Don't ask for more money, ask for less taxes. Because the salaries, the bigger the salaries are, it's not, you have to make so much money that the taxes, you know, you can still have something left. But don't ask for bigger salaries, ask for less taxes.
Let me go back to crime for a second. Obviously, one of the things you managed to do well in your life was being a parent. And I happen to think parenting is one of the most important problems we're facing. I mean, how to be a parent. We have to take a test to drive a car, but not to be a parent. And so a lot of people don't do it all that well. What did you teach your daughter, or what did you say? What kind of a parent were you? Were you a friend? Were you a disciplinarian? Were you a coach? What was your attitude toward being a parent, and why were you successful at it?
I think I was all of those things, but it's what you are yourself is what your child generally becomes. And there is along the line where you and the child, at least in my case, we became friends as well as mother and daughter. And I remember one day, when she was about 6 or 7 years old, she was stepping over the border of me being mother and her being daughter. And she called me Eartha. And I just turned and looked at her. And until this day, my daughter is almost 33. She still tells this tale that my mother gave me such a whack. I wound up on the floor, but I never touched her. I just gave her that look to make her realize borderline. You respect that borderline constantly. You never step over it. Because when the child respects the parents at home, then the child has a tendency to respect the elders outside of the home. And everything starts at home. So if one of us or the other gets into trouble, the other one is there to cushion you.
What would you have done differently in your life if you had it to go do over again? Phases of it that you said, gee, I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish I hadn't taken that job, or I wish I had done this, or...
I don't think I'm regretful about the chances that I've taken or the jobs that I had to do, because to me, any job is an honorable position to be in. And I was feeding myself and not asking and going out and marrying a rich man, which I had very many opportunities to do. I think sometimes my daughter thinks, Mommy, why didn't you do it? But I don't think I ever wanted to have a man or anyone take care of me and say with a feeling, I own you. I don't want to be owned. I want to be earned. And money cannot do that.
Why do so many marriages break up?
Because they're not earning each other. Everybody wants to win the other guy over, you know? Yeah. And maybe one of them wants to be with the feeling that I'm doing everything and you're doing nothing, and they're not sharing. That might be one of the great points of marriage. I divorced my husband because he was a thief.
A thief?
I was stealing my properties.
Seems like a good reason to divorce him to me.
Of course.
What was he stealing?
He didn't want to work in my buildings. He stole 2 buildings of mine here in New York City.
You're
and
killed.
He was stealing properties in New York. My daughter, I don't have to say anything out of turn because my daughter knows all about it.
Did that leave you poor, or do you still have buildings somewhere? I mean, are you all right? Or
I have my house.
it's about all a person
And I
needs.
still have my strength and my sense of humor. And I have my daughter, which is
That's
much
great.
more important than anything else.
And
So it was almost at a point where we had to start just about all over again. But as long as I'm still here,
Did
I'm
that?
still here.
Were you out of love with him? But by the time you figured out he was stealing, or did you just wake up one day and say, you know what, he's stealing? How could I love this guy?
Well, I think, yeah. That was about it. Yes.
He's stealing. It was all one morning. You got up and said, "That's it,
Yeah,
buddy."
as a matter of fact, I got into my car as he was walking up the hill in my house at Beverly Hills with his friends, and this is mine, and this is mine, and that is mine, and it was like the little. Have you heard that story about Dr. Seuss? This is mine, the little turtle that gets up on a little mowl, and all the people around his little subjects, and he looks out all the world, and he says, "This is mine." And then he wanted the mole to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and every time he got on top of it, he said, "This is mine," as far as his eye could see. Well, that's what I felt my husband was doing. And I decided I'd get in my car, and I rocked by him, and I whispered, "I'm going for a drive down to the beach. When I come back, I'd like you to be gone."
And when we come back, she'll still be here, Eartha Kitt. We're back with Eartha Kitt. You were the original, I think, what was it, Catwoman and Batman, yeah.
Yes.
Now you've been referred to as
series.
in the series
Yes.
with Adam West.
Adam West, yes.
Yeah. You've been referred to as the sex kitten, the Catwoman. Yeah. How do you explain that to your daughter when you get home at night and say, "Let's have a bowl of cereal," and you got to sort of have to explain that you're this international sex symbol?
I don't.
You never say anything?
No, I leave everything up to her interpretation.
Is that right?
Yeah, whatever she thinks. I don't even think Kit knew who I was on the outside world until I did Catwoman.
Is that right? Until you
Yes.
did a cartoon.
And I took her to school in the morning, and the kids all ran up to her and said, they looked at me and said, "Oh, is that your mother?" And I went, "Oh," and so it was then she realized, that's my mother? She's Catwoman.
Oh, that's funny. That is really great. Well, what do you miss in life? Do you miss anything that you had in the past that you wish you had today?
Well, I think I have it today. Just a family, which I never had. I never had a home that I could say. And I think my accountants are driven kind of mad because I'm always buying a house, fixing it up, and moving.
Is that right?
But I think this one now, I moved from the big one up to closer to my daughter. Because now I have a little family, and that is something I've always wanted.
Mm-hmm. Your daughter has a daughter now.
And she has a little
Son,
boy.
son, that's
Yeah,
right, he's at
Jason
camp.
Marshall Shapiro.
Jason Marshall Shapiro. That's
Yes,
cute.
and he's 3 years old. So now that I have a little family unit, I'm trying to get closer and closer to home so I can stay home more often now, such as doing more legitimate theater in America.
And you're going to be appearing at the Carlisle Hotel here in New York.
Starting in January, I think.
January,
Yes, yeah.
What are you going to do in England?
I'm going to do the last speech of Ulysses, Molly Bloom. It's called, yes. And she talks about her relationships with her man and so forth. And that'll start for the Edinburgh Festival, the 14th of August, I think. And we hopefully will take it into London, which we are negotiating now, and hopefully bring it into
New York?
Broadway. Yes.
Yeah.
And Aznavour is writing the music for
Wow.
it. So it should be quite interesting.
That'll be interesting.
Another challenge.
You mentioned men. I want to ask you about men. Are American men, have they become wimps because of the feminist movement, or are they as strong as they've ever been, or were they never strong?
I think it's not a matter of them becoming wimps, no. It's the confusion. I'm confused myself as a woman because the feminist movement has done some good as far as equality in salary according to your energy is concerned. That's good. But as far as man-woman is concerned, I think they screwed the hell out of it. Because a man doesn't open the door for you anymore. He doesn't.
I do, but I always get.
Well, we're
looked
not
at-
talking about you.
No,
Roger.
I know, but I do. But then half the women look at me as if I've done something wrong.
Yes, well, then they may be in a position where they think more like the feminists do than I do as a feminine. And I love men. and I love the flowers, and I love the diamonds.
The romance.
And I love the romance, yes.
Yeah.
But you guys don't do that anymore. Not you, Roger. Don't
No,
take it
I
personally.
still do it. I'm a little awkward at it, but I do. I see men very confused. Should they open
They
the
are
door? Should they not open the door?
Yes.
They're not allowed to say the word
Yes.
girl. I mean, everything's politically correct. You can't say certain words.
Yes.
And so
Well,
people,
I don't have. I'm constantly telling them, please, it's all right for you to open the door for me. I'm still a feminine woman. I love being a woman and a feminine creature. I have no intention of being competitive to a man or even trying to.
are men stronger than women or women stronger than men?
It depends on which degree you were talking about. Physically, the man is stronger, but he can't have a baby because of the pain to endure. So in that way, I think a woman is much more sensitive in some things. But she's what she is as a woman, and you are what you are as a man. There is nothing to compare it to, except the fact that we should get together once in a while. Roger.
Yes, I'm for that. I mean, listen, I'm for it as long as we're not politically correct. I can't remember what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say
I
anymore.
know.
I'm
It's
at a
so
certain
ridiculous.
generation that I can't remember. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of our country?
I'm optimistic about the future of our country as long as we learn how to take care of ourselves better rather than thinking in terms of those who are 15,000 miles away. It's fine to help those who are 15,000, 10 miles, 6,000 miles away, but everything starts at home.
And you think we're not doing enough for Americans here in America?
Giving Americans back their factories, back their jobs, back their self-respect, back to being Americans.
What will that take? Leadership?
Doesn't everything?
But would a real leader run today, or would the press destroy him?
I don't think the press is destroying anything, because if somebody is strong and he has his position and he knows how to hold it, such as Kennedy did, then I think Bobby would have made even a better president, because then he would have learned from his brother's mistakes. But you have to have a position that says the press has to do what they have to do, and their business is to inform the public.
And
I
your
know-
job as a leader,
And your job as a leader is to do as a leader, not spend your time fighting Rush Limbaugh, for instance, like this has done.
on that, we'll end it. Eartha Kitt, thank you.
Okay.
And we'll be right back.